to Robot Unicorn, hosted by my parents, Jess and Scott. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Welcome, Jessica.
Welcome.
How are you today?
I had to think about that for a minute, but yeah, no, I'm good. Had a busy weekend with the girls, Easter weekend, lots of family things, lots of activities. So it was busy, but good, I think.
Yeah.
Spent the day with the girls running errands yesterday. I could tell they were just done. Like, I actually was thinking a lot of the work that we do because like they just were all having meltdowns. Everyone was upset. Everyone was grumpy. And, you know, you get curious, you think about it, and you're just like, man, it's been busy. We just need some downtime.
Yeah, we did have a very busy weekend.
So I had that kind of day yesterday with the kids where it's just a lot of melting down, a lot of challenges. But honestly, I still enjoyed myself and had a good day with them, even though they had a bad day.
Well,
and
I talked to them and they seemed to all have a fine day. Like, yeah, there were parts of it that
it turned
did not.
around.
Yeah.
It actually turned around really nice. And it got sunny out. It was raining all day. And then when the sun came out, we started running around outside and it ended up being a really nice evening.
And biking and everything.
Biking and playing.
Cleaning up the garage.
Well, that was nice for you. So, all in all, yeah, I think feeling pretty good. How about you?
Yeah. I think this past weekend was very busy. And this coming weekend maybe won't be quite as busy, but I'm still taking the kids to Toronto myself. Mm-hmm. At least the older two. Because there's a Nintendo launch event for this new Switch that I probably won't be buying because it's too expensive. But
our daughter was asking us for it, and I said, I don't think so.
But all in all, it should be fun. But that's going to make this coming weekend a little busy for the girls too. So we'll probably have to have some built-in downtime before and after I take them to Toronto. And
yeah, and then I actually think the next weekend is the walk that I'm doing.
Is that already the week after? Oh,
yeah, it's already May. So a few busy weekends in a row. We've had a lot going on lately, and Scott and I prefer to have minimal things going on a weekend. So
internally, we feel like the kids are outwardly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Anyways, okay, let's get into the topic. Last week, we talked about part one of healthy skepticism and trust and what that looks like in little kids. And we kind of defined what trust is versus love and all that. So I'm going to start with the next question on the list. Middle childhood seems to, so that's 6 to 12 range, the big kid range, seems to be a real testing ground for trust, particularly around peer loyalty and fairness. What are the most common trust-related challenges you see in kids and friendships during these years, and how can adults guide them through betrayals or disappointments without crushing their willingness to connect? Because I think that is pretty challenging. Like, I'm sure we both dealt with that in that age range. Well, you definitely did. I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, I feel like I've talked a lot about different friendship struggles, and my experience is the common experience, especially for girls, but it is the same thing in boys. I think with boys, it's not always at that age as emotionally deep. I think sometimes that develops over time. But for girls in these early years of friendship, I think trust testing is a very common thing. Like, they're trying to figure out if they can trust each other. Mm-hmm. And it goes to a lot of what we talked about in terms of peer orientation, right? So if a child is not having that trusted relationship at home, if they haven't learned how to have a solid relationship with their own parents, then they're often turning to their peers, and they're turning to their peers for their sense of belonging and closeness. And then they're testing their peers a little bit, right? Like, can I trust you? And if they can't, some kids who don't know how to cope with that feeling of disappointment or who've experienced a lot of broken trust might retaliate. And so I feel like we just get these, like, a lot of layers. It gets really complex in those years, especially.
You think they're actively testing that, though? Or it's just a part of...
I think it's just a part of it, right? It's like, I tell you a secret about something that's going on with me. Will you tell someone, right? Like, that's, like, in my head, kind of a test, right, of trust. Are they for
you? But, like, you think I
don't know that they're
8-year-old, like our oldest, would be doing that?
I don't know that she actively is understanding that that's what's happening. But I think she's building these connections in her head, right? Well, this person's always kind of mean to me and makes fun of me. Okay, so I'm learning I can't really trust this person. this is the person who I really like. Now I'm going to hang out with her a little bit. I'm going to see if she treats me that same way. Is she nice to me? Is she mean to me? Does she make fun of me? Like kind of testing that trust, right? And if over and over this person repeatedly is kind to her and compassionate, has empathy towards her, she's starting to learn, okay, this is someone that I can trust and someone who I'm going to spend my time with at school. And I think a lot of that we do start to see play out a little bit on social media when the kids start to get onto social media and their Facebook messaging each other and they're on Snapchat, right? Can I trust you even when we're in a group chat together? So I don't know that they're never actively asking themselves this question, right? Can I trust you? But in these tiny interactions that they have, that's what they're trying to figure out. Who can I trust? Who are my real friends going to be? Who gives me a sense of closeness and belonging? Who makes me feel terrible about myself? That's really developing in those ages. And what they're trying to figure out is like, who are my people? And I think it gets kind of complex and messy sometimes because you have a whole bunch of kids all trying to figure out if they can trust each other, but all of their brains are still not fully developed and they're going to make mistakes and hurt each other. And I think that those years can just be messy in terms of trying to figure out how to trust.
See, I would argue that kids, especially in that age range where you're talking about that peer orientation, they are actually trying to fit in. So it is less about them trying to figure out who their people are and more about how can I fit in with other people. So it's kind of the reverse of what you're saying. That's just based on how they're acting. They're trying to fit in with the rest of the group.
Mm-hmm. So maybe what I'm describing could be like the healthier way to do it, right?
Yeah.
So the healthier option would be a child going into this age trying to figure out, can I trust these people? Being reflective, wondering, why does this person give me this feeling? Why?
I think our oldest daughter does that very well.
Yeah. But you're right.
Age.
In that
like if you think about when we were in that age range, I think it was more about trying to fit in than it was about testing those relationships to see who we would want to interact with more. And we inevitably found that out because there were certain people that were reliable and honest and trustworthy with us and others that were not. But I think it was more just those awkward years where you're trying to fit in with everyone's like growing and developing. You're starting to hit puberty. It's the awkward years of childhood and I feel like kids are more, at least I was, more internal, thinking about, okay, what can I do to actually fit in here?
Yeah, and maybe that's the difference between our two upbringings, right? Because I even remember at that stage, even though I wanted to have friends, fitting in or being popular was just never something I cared about. Like I didn't have that deep desire to fit in. And I feel like there's this balance, and this goes into teens and adults still struggle with this, of belonging versus authenticity, right? Like I want to belong to this group. I want to feel seen. I want to be a part of this group. And then there's often that battle of like, but can I still be my authentic self in this group?
Right.
And I feel like that is really what we're kind of talking about, those two pieces that starts in those middle years.
Yep.
Belonging versus authenticity. And often it feels like you have to choose one in those years.
Yeah, I think that's accurate because I would say that I chose belonging over authenticity.
Yeah.
Kind of up until my adult years.
And many people do for so long in their lives. They choose belonging. And so they'll do things that they don't really want to do, but it's just, if I do this, then I'm a part of the group. Mm-hmm. Or even you see family systems, right? My whole family believes this. I don't really, but when I'm with them, I'll say I do because then I belong to them.
Yeah.
So it's this internal battle that I think that's really what we're talking about, starts in those middle years. When you're starting to develop your own values, you're starting to see what you believe and who you want to trust. It's this battle between I want to belong and I want to be authentic, but sometimes I have to choose one or the other, and that's really hard.
So maybe a better question than how can we guide our kids when they're in this age range through betrayals and disappointments? It's how can we guide them through choosing to be authentic over choosing only belonging.
Yeah.
Or maybe both, but like, I don't know, maybe there's a healthy mix between the two.
I think the desire for belonging makes sense, right? Everybody desires to belong.
Well, that's, I think, humanity.
Yeah.
It's, up until recently, we were quite tribal, right? So
We're created to be close to other people, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with our desire to belong. That is part of our development. But I think when that desire to belong, and when you start to notice in your child that the desire to belong means they're not being authentic anymore, that's when we want to intervene as parents. But I actually think, to skip ahead to where we'll probably go for ourselves as adults, it actually starts with looking at ourselves. Like, where are we? If you think of belonging and authenticity on, a bit of a scale, like, where are you? Do you seek so much to belong that you can't be authentic? Like, can you actually model authentic conversations to your kids? I remember having this conversation with moms in therapy before, right? And often this really comes up as your kids get older and they're really watching you. And the moms would say, like, look, I'm a certain way around my family. They have certain beliefs or values or political views or whatever it is. And when I'm with them, I say I agree with them. But then when I'm home, I teach my kids something totally different. And I don't want to be that person anymore, because then my kids see, well, why, when you're at, Nana's house, do you say one thing, and when you're home, you say another thing? They're witnessing a parent who's not authentic.
yeah.
And I think if we want to teach our kids that their authentic voice matters, and we want them to be authentic at school and at home and wherever they are, it has to come from them seeing that in us first. And I think modeling being authentic and true to yourself is huge for our kids.
All right, let's move on to teens. As teens strive for independence, trust dynamics with parents often shift pretty dramatically. They might trust peers more, test boundaries, and the sting of betrayal can feel incredibly immense. So what advice do you have for parents trying to maintain or rebuild trust with their teenagers during this complex stage? Because again, they're going through puberty and everything at that time too. So it just, the flood of hormones and whatever they're going through, we went through it, but it's hard to remember.
I would say a couple things. First, stay important to your teens. So I think in these years, they do start to crave belonging from their peers. That's normal, that's natural, but don't write them off then and be like, oh, well, they're out with their friends, or they don't need me, or they're fine, they can watch themselves, we're going to go away for the weekend and just leave them. It's obviously okay to allow them to have some independence and to support that, but don't just be like, well, they're teens now, and kind of write it off. Like, I've seen a lot of parents do that, and then their teens just continue to find belonging elsewhere. Right. I would say find how you can continue to be important. And I think for parents of teens, a lot of that is those tiny moments, like when your teen is maybe supposed to be going to bed and instead grabs a snack and starts making nachos at 10 o'clock at night, and you're tired and you want to go to bed, but they all of a sudden want to talk to you about their day. Like, that's your opportunity. Take it. Have that conversation, eat the nachos with them, stay up an extra hour, and just like have that time to chat with them, right? Or they want to spend every weekend day with their new boyfriend. Okay, well, maybe one day in the weekend is fine, but then maybe the other day you try and plan something and the two of you go out and you do something together. So finding ways to stay important in those years will be critical in helping them navigate it, because even though they're older, they still need you.
I like that makes sense. Do you think it's more challenging when they are teenagers compared
Absolutely.
to when they're little?
Yeah, it's definitely more challenging because you can't control what they do so much, right? Let's say when they were little, if you did timeouts, you can be like, you have to sit here. And they have no choice but to listen to you, right? Like, they have to sit there. Or they misbehaved, you're like, I'm going to take away your iPad. Well, they have no choice. They're little. You can control them. In the teen years, you can't. So that's why setting the foundation for that trusted, respectful relationship in those early years is so important, because that will remain in the teen years if you've already set that foundation.
Yeah.
But if you've built your foundation on control and punishments and just getting angry at them for not doing the right thing, when they're old enough to just walk out of the door and drive away, like, they're not going to listen to you anymore. So that's where that foundation really comes into play. And then I think remembering that teens still need a safe place to land, right? You want to be that safe place for them to land. And so having conversations with them like, hey, I want you to come to me if anything uncomfortable happens.
Yeah.
All those things are going to matter so much in those teenage years.
So again, it really comes down to being that trusted caregiver for them, someone they can rely on.
Yeah, because betrayal will happen. Their friends will hurt their feelings. They'll show up to a party and things are happening that they don't feel comfortable with. Can they call you? Do they trust what your reaction's going to be? Do they want to call you, right? Like my goal for our kids is not that they're never going to have hardships in the teenage years, but it's like if that happens, we'll be their first call.
Yeah.
And
I think that's unrealistic anyway to say that they're not going to have hardships.
Of course they will. But even if it's 2 a.m. and they're like, I've had too many drinks at a party, I want their first thought to be, I can still call my parents and they'll come get me.
Hopefully that doesn't happen, but
yeah.
Yep.
I know. I think those years will be tough for both of us.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay. Many adults, obviously myself included, have experienced significant betrayal, both early in life and later in life. We talked about in the last episode, trust but verify, the concept of like you trust people for that they're going to do what they say, but you kind of verify, and you have to verify by seeing consistency in that. But in established relationships, is there really a reliable way to sense deep deception before it causes major harm without resorting to constant suspicion that damages the relationship itself? That's a doozy, isn't it?
I'm curious what you think before I answer. Do you think that there's a way to identify deception?
I don't know. Like, let's say in this most recent situation, were there maybe red flags? Yes. But should that have made me more skeptical? I don't know. I don't think so.
I think we can exhaust ourselves looking for, what did I miss? How did I not see that sign? How did I not know that this is coming?
That's the thing. I don't really feel that bad that I didn't figure it out ahead of time. Because, I don't know. I feel like at this point in my life, it would make me more likely to not trust everyone. And I don't think that's fair either. And like historically, yes, I probably would have, when I was late teens, early adulthood or something like that, maybe I would have I didn't trust many people at that point anyway. But I feel like there's a risk of hurt by opening yourself up to others, like we talked about last week. And I don't know, personally, I like the idea of trust but verify. It's also an engineering thing too. You trust but verify. You make sure you double check things and you just keep a watchful eye. You notice patterns, but you're not by default being cynical.
To your point, I think there are red flags we can always look out for in
100%.
relationships, right? So
I'm just thinking more in this personal, like this most recent issue that we've had. Is there something that could have been done to...
I don't think you could have known. And I think that those are the trickiest ones, right? I've had not the same, but I've had that happen to me too.
Yep.
And I think when you feel like, wait, I thought I knew, and now I guess I didn't know this person, that feeling is very confusing and conflicting and can be really tough. And I think to your point, it is important to not then be like, I can't trust anyone. All relationships are bad. Every person's out to get me. Because I think in my own reflections on these types of things, it's like humans are just so controlled by their own desires, their own ego, their own nature, right? That's how we are programmed to survive. And I think sometimes we take things so personally, like, why couldn't they have told me this? Or why did they treat me this way? But it actually, for the most part, isn't even about us at all. It's about their own issues, their own trauma, their own hurt, their own stuff. And so for me, that's really helped when we've had situations like this where someone we trusted or cared about or was in our lives and we realized that they weren't who we thought they were. It really helps to not take it personal when you're like, this is their stuff. This isn't about me. This isn't everybody. And yeah, I opened up my heart to this person, and it's really hard that they showed me who they were. And now I learn, okay, so now I can't trust this person. But that doesn't mean it has to reflect on everybody in my life.
Yeah, right.
And I do also think then you can I remember someone once told me this to help with anxiety, like take it as data. But it has actually helped me.
I mean, that's easier said than done when you're close with someone too, though, right?
It's so hard.
That's, I would say, impossible to do when you're close with someone.
And not until you've spent a lot of time processing it, right?
Yeah.
But you can kind of learn for next time, okay, well, next time maybe I'll watch out for these signs. But you can't beat yourself up and be like, how didn't I see this? Especially when you did have a long-term relationship with someone and you did trust them.
Yep.
It hurts. And I think we can get really caught up on the facts of like, why did they hurt me like this? Why would they do that? Why did this happen? And that all is kind of just like saving us from the grief of how upsetting it is.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Not that I've, especially right after it happened, I was trying to think, like, is there anything I could I have warned everyone about this? But I keep coming back to, I think it happened. It's just, I don't know that there was too much that I could have done to prevent it from happening or to know. Mm-hmm. So I don't beat myself up over it or anything. Mm-hmm. It sucks, but it sucks less for me than it does for some other people too.
Yeah. And it hurts and it's tough. And I think when you can recognize, this was huge for me, that it's actually not about you. Like, I'm more speaking from my own experience here, but when I realized that how this person treated me felt so personal, but actually it wasn't about me, it was about their own stuff that they have going on. And that has helped me be like, okay, this doesn't mean I can't trust anyone or ever open up to anyone ever again. It's just, in this situation, this person is human and they have their own stuff.
Well, like I was saying before, I personally think that the kids in the 6 to 12 range and beyond, I think even adults, we as humans are more, we think people think about us more than they actually do. Mm-hmm. So I can't remember when I heard, there's some quote about that. That has helped me a lot with like even being nervous about doing things or going up in front of a crowd or something like that. People think a lot less about you than you actually realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so when someone hurts you or breaks your trust, it's really important to recognize that that's more about their own stuff, probably deeper work they have to do, their own trauma, their own issues, than it is about you being some terrible person.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in this situation, it's not like they did anything to me personally.
No, but just in general, because I think a lot of people listening probably have had friendship struggles. A lot of people tell me they've had like a friendship breakup, like a friend just stopped talking to them one day and they don't understand why. What did I do wrong? Like, I thought we were such good friends. And, it is important to think about, well, maybe it's not about me. Maybe they have their own stuff going on.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I can never make new friends or trust them. And that's what we talked about last time. Like, trust takes time, takes consistency, takes continually like kind of proving yourself to someone. It's actions. It's not just like a one-time thing. It's consistent actions over time.
Yes, exactly.
Now, I have a question for you.
Sure.
As someone who is skeptical and cynical sometimes, I think you've
feel like
improved.
I'm pretty good at that.
You've improved a lot. What are things over time that have been red flags for you or that would kind of immediately turn you off from trusting someone?
Number one is talking poorly about others. And not just like once or twice, it's consistently. I think that's probably the biggest one. If you're talking poorly of others constantly, it's likely you're going to talk poorly of me or my family or whoever. I think that's a big one.
That's huge.
People who are a little bit too smooth and charming and can like sort of joke or talk their way out of any situation. I've always thought this, but I'm learning more and more that that's likely a mask for something else. I don't know. I think that's a big one for me is as soon as anyone's a little bit too charming and they're a little bit too they're not awkward at all in any situation. I don't know. That to me,
It's the
just
charisma to me,
Yeah,
like
the
too
charisma, yeah,
charismatic. Yeah.
charisma, that's a red flag for me because I have seen how people can turn things on and then all of a sudden they're in a different situation and it's
Turned
completely
off.
opposite
Yeah.
person. People who are too black and white. I think if you are so convinced that it's either one way or another way and one way is right, that to me is not a trustworthy trait. Because that's not, life is not black and white. There's so much variation and so many different people and so many different experiences and situations that it is just plainly not possible for everything to be black and white, nor most things to be black and white. So I don't know. I think those are the three main ones.
I'm trying to think for me, because I feel like as adults, sometimes it is important to be able to identify, oh, what might be a red flag to me, or what might be something that, okay, maybe I should just look out for this person.
Like in terms of that, like, I don't know, hiding stuff constantly or being secretive about things. Like, yeah, of course, I think the regular stuff, but.
No, but I think your answers were good. I had a few that I would add to that. I think a red flag for me is someone who talks so much that they don't ever give you like room to say anything. I've noticed, I think, in people that talk so much and they're often saying very little, like I feel it's a mask often for their own feelings that they don't want to share, or like deeper things going on for them that they don't want to share. And they fill up so much space. It's kind of like the charisma, and they're very charismatic and usually everybody likes them. And then they leave and you're like, did we even talk about anything real? Or did we just talk about like, all these things? So talking really fast, loving. So this is something in my position. I think the more our business grew, the more followers I got, the more people all of a sudden want to hang out with me. So I feel like people who only want to spend time with you when things are like you're doing well. Now all of a sudden they want to be associated with you when they never cared about that before. That's, for me, just given our work, that's a huge red flag to me. People that come on too strong, too fast, that is a red flag for me too. It's like they love you so much. Now they're texting you all the time. They're coming on really strong and fast. They think you're like the best person ever. They are always wanting to hang out. And that's all happened within like a month. Like, to me, relationships should take time to develop. There should be time to build trust.
That's that love bombing we were talking about.
Yeah, that's the love bombing. And I think that's a common one that trips people up because they want to belong. And I've heard from so many people that they thought they had a best friend, and then all of a sudden this person goes and like leaves them and they don't understand. And then they look back and they're like, oh, it was too quick, too fast. So that's a red flag for me. And then all the same things that you said too. But I do think over time, being hurt, I'm more aware of these things now.
Yeah.
The other thing is anyone who sounds too good, or like this is like people I don't trust online. Like they sound too scripted. They have too many like perfect slogans for their work, and they're very charismatic, and they're very like, I see that a lot online, and it's a great way to build a business, but I always am like, I don't trust that.
Right.
And then if someone has hurt me once, like with our kids, I can be like, we're all humans. We make mistakes. But if it's a repeated pattern of being hurtful, then I'm learning that, okay, this is a pattern now, and I don't have to keep letting this happen to me.
Okay. So trust is inevitably broken sometimes, even in what I would call fundamentally healthy relationships. And I think this is from those early years where kids are kind of learning how to interact with each other into adulthood. What does the process of rebuilding trust actually look like? Is it always possible? What are the non-negotiables required from both parties for genuine repair to occur?
Absolutely. I think even your relation, like maybe your closest friends you've had for a long time, or your parents, or your partner in life, of course there's going to be ruptures to that trust, right? It could be as simple as your partner's been telling you, okay, I'm going to be home at this time for dinner. And then every time they're late, right? And you start to not trust you're not going to be home when you say you're going to be home. And now I'm building resentment towards you because I'm home with all the kids and I'm expecting you're going to be here, right? There's like minor things of trust. And I think those minor things, we need to learn how to talk through it instead of building resentment, because I do think when trust is broken, even if it's something small, like the person's always home later than they say they're going to be, you can build resentment, and that can cause a big rupture over time in your relationship. So I think for those smaller things, it's being able to communicate that, right? Saying something like, hey, you told me you're going to be home at 5. And now one day, sure, that's fine that you were home at 5:30, you worked late. But now it's been like 4 days in a row. And every single day you say you're going to be home this time and you're actually home at this time. And it's starting to bother me. Like, how can we work through this? So that's for the minor things. And then I think that there's bigger things that can break a trust in a relationship, right? And I think what we have to do is rebuild the trust. And it kind of goes, we have to sometimes go back to square one, right? Which is almost feeling like we have a fresh start to the relationship. Then we go back to, how do you actually build trust? Well, you build it in tiny moments over time when you choose the other person's best interests, sometimes even over your own. And for those big, big ruptures, it can take years to build back trust. And sometimes trust doesn't ever fully come back.
Right. I was going to ask that. So is it ever possible? Is it always possible?
No. It is possible to rebuild your relationship, and it's possible to still be in a relationship with a person. But I think there are times where it's possible that you never build that trust fully back up. And I think about a lot of people, let's say, who have difficult relationships with their parents, right? Where their parents constantly betrayed their trust when they were little, and now they're grown up and their parents want to repair that. They want to fix that. And maybe you can have an adult relationship with your parent that is decent. It's good. You have a relationship there. Your parent wants to repair things. But does that mean all your trust comes back for your parent? Maybe not. And maybe there's wisdom to that, right? So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes there is some wisdom behind that, to not fully trusting someone who's hurt you. But it does take repeated times of showing up.
And likely the bigger the issue, the more likely you need some help, some support from a therapist or someone an expert in that field.
100%. A trauma-informed therapist. Not all therapists are created equal. And if your therapist is telling you to go back to this person who's hurt you, whether that's a spouse or a parent or a friend, I'd be wary of that advice before you've done your work, your own internal work around that. We've seen that in our lives. Not all therapists are created equal, so make sure that you have someone who's trauma-informed if you're working through a big betrayal later in life.
What do you think is the biggest mistake you see parents or individuals make when trying to navigate or teach their kids about trust?
Well, I think we've kind of talked about it. I think one of the biggest mistakes is telling your kids, like, you just have to trust me and do everything that I say. And, I think...
So not questioning things.
No, don't question things. The kind of do as I say, or because I said so kind of model of parenting. It's like, yes, of course, we want our kids to depend on us. It's really important. But at the very same time, we want to teach them how to listen to themselves. Because often kids have a lot of wisdom inside of their bodies, right? It's like when we force kids to hug. Well, I said grandma was safe, so give her a hug because grandma's a safe person. But then your child's going against their own instincts saying, maybe I don't want a hug from grandma right now, right? So helping your child tune into their own instincts versus just saying, because I'm your parent, therefore you should trust me and just obey me.
I mean, I'm biased, but I agree.
I found that actually on Sunday. We went to your grandma's house, so our kid's great-grandmother's house, and I almost found the words coming out of my mouth. Just go hug grandma. And I'm Jess. I was offended by myself. I'm like, am I really feeling like I need to say that right now? For what? Because our middle daughter didn't want to give grandma a hug. She just wanted to give her a little wave. And I almost said, just give her a hug. It's fine. I know how simple it is, how easy it is just to let that slip out.
For sure.
I know grandma's safe. I know she would love a hug. But, so sometimes we do have to catch ourselves or repair if we've done that, because it can be so easy to do.
I mean, my grandma's wonderful.
And we love your grandma.
Looking across the lifespan and through the lens of your work, what is the most surprising or profound, you like that? Profound lesson you've learned about the nature of human trust and suspicion?
Trust takes a long time to build and no time to break. I feel like that's the biggest thing I've learned. It's like years. You can build a relationship for years with someone. And if you do something that really breaks their trust and threatens like their relationship with you, it can just be shattered instantly. Yeah. And then it takes so long to build back up again. So I feel like that is something I think about a lot and I actually think we have to question ourselves too. Like, what makes me someone that someone else can trust? Like, I think that often.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about being authentic and showing your kids that you're not changing who you are and based on the situation. You're consistent and you're that consistent person in their life. And
I will say about you, I have learned a lot of that from you because I think, growing up as a girl, whether or not this was ever a message that I received, it's just like, you do seek that belonging, you do struggle sometimes to be your most authentic self. And I feel like I've really learned from you because everywhere Scott goes, he's his most authentic self, even if sometimes it's like, oh, Scott, tone it down a little bit. But who you hear on the podcast is exactly the same as you are in real life, right? Maybe you have a few more inappropriate jokes in real life than we let you make on the podcast.
That you cut out.
That we cut out. But you're the same person, right? So someone listens to you on the podcast, they meet you on the street, they're a friend of ours, they're our parents, they're going to hear the same version of you wherever you go. And to me, that tells me that I can trust you. I don't see you morphing and changing yourself depending on where we are. You're just the same.
Yeah.
You don't always express all your opinions. Sometimes you say, I don't feel like talking about that right now. That's fine. But you don't ever change who you are or your values based on who you are.
Right.
And to me, that signals to me that I can trust you because I know you're the same with me as you are with everybody else. And that is something I strive to do as well, to be the exact same when I'm doing my weekend polls as I am when I'm talking to a friend, as I am when I'm talking to my kids. I want to be that exact same person everywhere I go. And to me, that is one of the things that can make you a trustworthy person.
Yeah.
Sometimes that means I say something that, maybe someone doesn't agree with and that's okay. But I want to give that message to our kids too. But I've really been thinking about that. Like, how can we know that we are trustworthy? We're talking so much about trust. We better be trustworthy ourselves too, right? I think the other thing to know that we're trustworthy people is, are you willing to be honest? Like, if someone asks me a question, will I give them an honest answer if they're asking me? I think for a time I would say no, but now I'll say yes. That's something I've had to work really hard on.
Yeah, because you don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I used to maybe not be honest because I didn't want to hurt someone's feelings or say something they didn't agree with, right? But over time, I have to choose to be authentic, right? And you can do that with kindness. I'm still always kind, but sometimes I'll say something like, someone's like, well, don't you think kids just need some punishment? And I'm not like, I can see where you're coming from. You're right.
I mean, that's a bit of that's an easy one for you to say. No, like you would never agree with that because you know so much. But let's go back to politics. Mm-hmm. If someone were to come to you and say, you should vote for this person, don't you think that what they're trying to do is like really great and valuable, and it's coming from someone that you trust and don't want to hurt their feelings? Do you think that might change how you actually answer?
I think it depends on the scenario, because I have disagreed with people that I love and trust on politics and say, hey, I think it's okay that we disagree. We can still love each other and have disagreement. And I've also had times where people are telling me all the things and I'll just ask them questions. Like, I kind of just deflect it back on them, ask them a whole bunch of questions about what they think. And then there's times too when I know people are coming at me because they're kind of looking for an argument in terms of politics. And I'll just say, I don't really feel like talking about that. So it kind of depends on the situation. But I do not get into fights with people who are seeking out an argument. I don't do that. That's a boundary for me.
Right. That's why I wanted to talk about something different from parenting. Because yes, of course, on parenting related stuff, that's the thing. You're the expert on that.
But even in parenting, people will come to me seeking a fight.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's true. But again, the people that are trying to seek the fight with you are likely not those who actually have like an in-depth understanding of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a different situation versus politics is a little bit more, it's ideological. It's more like, I think it should be done this way versus the evidence suggests it should be done this way.
I know. I hear what you're saying.
Right?
That makes sense.
Because a little bit more, say, running a country, I think is a little bit more chaotic than the science that backs how parents can raise their kids, like developmental science.
But it could be the same thing for religion or religious beliefs or values, all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, if you could distill all of this complexity down to one core piece,
Here we go.
Piece of advice for our listeners seeking to foster healthy trust in themselves and others while maintaining wise discernment in their own lives, what would it be?
One thing?
Yep.
Okay. I would love to see people tuning in with themselves more. Like, for example, in our relationships, are we taking time to pause and ask ourselves, why do I trust this person? What have they shown to me through their behavior, through their words, through their actions that show me that this is someone I can trust? Yeah. What does my body feel and say when I'm with this person? How do I feel? Do I feel at ease? Do they make me feel uncomfortable? Do I feel like I get their most authentic self? And am I being a trustworthy person back to this person, right? Because it's a two-way street. And sometimes, especially like we've talked about, if you struggle with belonging, you struggle to be authentic, all of these things, sometimes you can be the person that's not trustworthy in the scenario too. So we have to look back on that as well. And I would love to see people doing that pause. I think a lot of times in relationships, we don't pause. Life is busy, we move fast, and we're not necessarily asking ourselves, like, why is this person my friend? How do I feel when I'm around them? Do I actually trust them? Like, do we just sit there and gossip about people the whole time? Like, does that feel like a productive friendship to me? Does gossiping with them for an hour once a week fill me up in the way that I want it to? Do I trust them? Because if they're willing to talk bad about everyone in their life, are they going to do the same thing to me? Right. So I think it kind of comes down to that. And even with our kids, pausing with them. How does your body feel? How did you feel when this person said that? What do you wish that you said? Tuning back in with ourselves, I think, is huge and a thing that will really protect us and help us, because we are wise, but we often don't listen to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've lost a lot of that too, because there's a lot of noise.
There's a lot of
in
noise
the world. So it's hard to know whose voice is in your head at this point almost.
Yeah, especially if you've spent your whole life seeking belonging. And you might even listen to this. And I was talking to a friend recently who was in another friend group. And she said to me, she's like, Jess, I don't know why I hang out with them anymore. Like we've just hung out for so many years and I just always hang out. But every time I leave, I feel bad about myself. We've just talked bad about people. I don't agree with their values. It's like, I don't really trust them. So I'm just hanging out with them because it's a group of people. And so I think a lot of people are kind of there too. So I think the pause helps with that.
Wonderful.
How do you feel after this conversation?
Good. How should I feel?
Well, I don't know. You wanted to have this conversation. So do you feel more equipped, or do you feel like you've processed a little bit, or?
No, because I feel like I already processed it.
We've already talked about this. Yeah.
No, the reason I wanted to have this discussion is because of this most recent situation that I had with a close friend. And I wanted to I think it's important for us to talk about how we can prepare our kids. Like, obviously we want to help ourselves too as parents, but help our kids be able to trust others while still being skeptical and being able to question things and not, start out life like me where you're just kind of cynical about everything.
Yeah.
I want to equip our kids to have a healthy trust and skepticism for life.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a valuable skill for them to have. So that's why I wanted to discuss with you. And then, I skipped over a whole bunch of my questions too, because we could probably have a part 3 of this episode. But.
And if you're listening and you've found this to be interesting, then I would love to hear your thoughts on it. And maybe we will at some point do a part 3, because I feel like you and I could just go and go. Like, there's so much. And I did want to end on one note because I feel like I didn't say this, but if you've been betrayed by a friend, by a partner, by a family member, like just know that if that hurts to your core, like physically painful, it makes sense. I do think that betrayal is some of the worst pain, some of the worst feeling that we can go through. And give yourself a lot of grace and a lot of time to heal. And just, I know even in our situation, like when your family member and we found out all this stuff, right? And everyone's like, well, you just have to forgive them. You just have to, you still have to see them and pushing us. That was so painful. That was like, people didn't understand how.
Yeah, no one was seeking to understand any aspect of it at all in that situation.
Yeah.
That was from several years ago now. But
yeah, but I just feel like so many people who've been betrayed, they feel this pressure to go back to the person who hurt them immediately. And so just want to just speak to those people who are listening right now and just say, give yourself time to heal and seek out a professional who's trauma informed, who can support you in that.
Yeah.
But I just want to validate how awful that feeling really is.
Yeah. And hopefully, as we learn this for ourselves as adults, we can help our children learn so they don't have to deal with all of the same, not that they won't have difficult things happen in life, but they'll be better equipped.
Exactly. And that's all we can really offer them, right?
Yep.
And then hopefully they're better equipped than us and they can equip their kids better. And yeah, it's kind of beautiful.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions or comments on it, you can send us an email. We have email address podcast@robotunicorn.net. And we love reading them. We can't always get back to all of them, but we do our best.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for being here and listening to this episode today. It means the world to us to have you here. If this conversation was helpful for you, it would mean a lot if you could like and subscribe. That just shows us if the conversation is meaningful and helpful and helps it get out to more people. Also, I just wanted to let you know that every week we have a new episode drop. And if you want to be notified when that happens, just hit the little bell icon. Again, thank you so much for being here, and we will talk to you again next week.